Welcome everyone to our Theosophical Sundays. This evening we have a special guest, Carole van Weede from Auckland. She's from HPB Lodge. Carole became a member back in 2014 and she's been on the committee since 2016 and attended conventions in Palmerston, Hamilton and Wellington. And I'll tell you a little bit about Carole. Prior to her spiritual development in the 1980s, she was offered a major coordinator role in the Star Network Younger Group, an Auckland friendship community spearheaded by a couple of staff members of the Auckland Star after they received a phenomenal response to an article about the difficulty of meeting people in and around Auckland. So Carole became involved in the Spiritualist Church in the 1980s, becoming president of the Pakuranga Spiritual Awareness Centre for about 8 years until 2012. She continues to coordinate services for Auckland and some New Zealand centres by monthly email distribution since then. She's also taught many small groups meditation and spiritual development, attending her own development groups as well. From 1991, she read 3 books of A Course of Miracles after some divine intervention that directed her to that. She says it definitely helped her understand what we really are rather than who we really are. Carole's current interests lie mainly in the ancient pre-Christian era around the world, back and beyond the Younger Dryas period, attending a convention of megalithomania in England in 2019. She's also investigated mysteries around sacredness of water, energy lines around Earth, crop circles and the relationship between the sun and the earth, much of which is overlooked by the scientific world and educational institutions. Her spiritual interest in the afterlife has led her to compile information on this popular subject, and that has led to the presentation tonight, which is Near-Death Experiences, the Journey. So welcome, Carole.
Thank you, Renee. And thank you everyone for coming tonight. Hope you're all settled in with a cup of tea. I'd just like to add that this is my research and my understanding of it. It's certainly not the proof or evidence. It's just what I have gleaned from the information I've seen. So we shall start, and I think with the NDEs, I think most of you will probably know what an NDE is, being a theosophist, but should there be anyone out there who's interested but not knowing much about it, it is something that occurs, it's a situation that might occur where an individual's life is in jeopardy. And that will mean they're flatlining, or their brain has died, or the heart and the brain have both given up, in situations where they shouldn't be able to remember anything, observe anything. So these are really interesting glimpses, you might say, into the afterlife is the best way to put it. Peter Fenwick has given the quote there, NDEs appear to be portals to another dimension, to put it without being religious in any way. So I'll just start a little bit into it now with some questions, because I think it's always good to look at the questions that we need to ask ourselves. We often don't, or we might do, but it's actually good to think about these when we have this presentation, because we are here for 75 years. We're born into this world and we aren't given a destination of any kind of itinerary. We don't know why we are born at this time. We don't know what our purpose is, or do we have lots of purposes? We don't get a ticket to go anywhere, a qualification of any sort. But, you know, you would be, if you went to drive out somewhere, you would probably say, I'm going to the shops. You have a destination. I'm going to work, or I'm going to see some friends. There's usually some motive behind it, but we aren't really given any clues about this. So it's pretty good to actually get a glimpse into what has meaning for us as we travel through our life. Yes, we have to meet people along the way, and I think that this is probably the critical point. We have to meet people. We don't know why we meet them, but there's always some little bit purpose behind each meeting of an individual. And why now? Why in this era when we are having a time of change, dramatic change? So, you know, technology is a big one. And, you know, it's just the way the internet is bringing everyone together, like tonight. So we don't even know who we were meant to be. It's a very difficult situation sometimes for a young person, for instance, a teenager who's about to leave school, and they get asked, what do you want to do when you leave school? And a lot of the kids just don't know. They don't know because they haven't had a background of any particular desire for anything. So it's a very hard decision to make, unless, of course, you're passionate about animals or engineering. You might have something there, but in my case, I didn't. My father worked in an office, and I saw his office, and he said, what are you going to do when you finish college? And I just thought, well, I suppose I could go into an office because I do know, and it looks pretty good being in an office. And that was all I went on. So we're probably all a little bit like that, and we've probably changed careers quite a few times, depending on your age. So you may not even be here for yourself. You may be here to help someone else or lots of other people. So that there is no way of knowing. Some more clues, like we may only be here for 2 hours or 100 years, but why are we destined to only have that specific amount of time? And why can't we be told? I suppose it is a bit difficult to be sent an email or something to say this is what your child will be when they grow up, but it does seem to be a bit of a secret. We don't know what our life is worth or even what that point is. Now, some people nearly die. In other words, they come back, and they usually come back with a different perspective. So what are they told? Are they told anything at all about that? Or did they experience something? Or did they just come back knowing? Okay, so with NDEs, there does not appear to be any unified experience. And Dr. Raymond Moody is probably one of the most well-known researchers. He's written lots of books. I could probably give you some of them. Not everyone shares the same experience, and that is because everyone's NDE is different. They're never the same. They're always different. But they may move around the things that we might know about. But we'll cover those anyway as we go on. So some have a choice to return, and then some are told to return. You have to complete something. It is not your time to stay here. Not many are actually told why, but some people come back just knowing. Some of the common experiences which you may know about are out-of-body experience. And this is an OBE where if you're lying down or in a room somewhere, you are floating out of your body and up, usually to about where the ceiling is, and you're looking down on your physical body. You feel weightless and you have pleasant feelings of bliss or ecstasy. It's just there is no more pain in the body. There are no more anxieties, worries, stresses. It's like it's all been lifted away from you. And then there may be a tunnel of light through darkness towards the light. And this can happen to some people, but it doesn't happen to everyone. So everyone's experience is very different. You enter a heavenly or otherworldly realm. And this is possibly just wherever the ending is. We all don't, there's not everyone will go through a tunnel of light. The Japanese, for instance, most Japanese will travel on water and arrive at a destination. They are always related to the water. So it very likely depends upon your cultural upbringing and your outlook, of course. When you arrive through the tunnel, or you just arrive, you can often see deceased relatives and friends waiting for you on the other side, and they're all standing there waiting to greet you. You can also have a life review. This happens to a lot of NDEers when they've had quite a long time on the other side. They will actually be taken through a review of their life. Sometimes it's actually really helpful for them because it gives it to you from a different perspective other than your own. It's there showing how other people have seen the same situation as yourself. So it may be that you've fallen out with someone and then you have an NDE with a past life review, and these people were expressing themselves to you when you fell out in a different thought than you were thinking. You misunderstood what they were saying or something like that. And suddenly through a life review, you will realise that there has been a wrong done there, that that you misunderstood what they were saying. So it actually brings everything back into the correct perspective. Also, a lot of people will generally see either a benevolent religious figure, as in Jesus for Christians, or it may be, depending on which part of the world, what culture you came from, it often relates to that, or it may even just be an angel. They're usually very tall, like 7 to 9 feet is what they usually say, how tall they are. So they will often talk to you from behind you or face you, but they are totally overwhelming. The whole experience that everyone talks about is the overwhelming experience of love. The moment you released from your body into the tunnel and to the other side, the whole feeling is just complete and utter love. And when you meet the Supreme Being, it feels as if they are the source of this love. It's something that they can't describe in words. They experience flying on the other side to dreamlike scenes. You sometimes, if you have an NDE, will be taken to different places, wherever you want to go and experience something. According to one of the young NDEers, he said that everybody has wings. So that has been recorded. Everyone grows their own wings. There are lots of butterflies and birds and flowers, lots of people and animals. There is no speaking because you've lost your voice box. That's a physical thing. So instead, the conversation happens by a thought transference. What you think gets relayed, and they will relay back to you by thought their answers. Now, in this other world, You might see vivid colours. They say reality is really quite acute. You will see colours that you don't see here on earth. You will hear music, and there are sounds that you've never heard here on earth. There are remarkable nature scenes for things like flowers that have a different, flowers that we've never seen here on earth. We become truly aware, more conscious, and ultra-real impressions take over. So the people will say, did you feel it was real? And they will usually answer and say it was more real than here on earth, much more acute in reality. And another experience is when they come back, they have an acceptance of what happens to them, and they are no longer afraid of death. Some more common experiences, they get told while they're over there that there is always hope and there's always love, and the love is always there for that person. The little boy said that nobody was old. That's good to know. They tried to get from him what old meant, and they sort of said, well, maybe over 50s. So you can actually take on the experience of when you were younger and at your best in your life. There's probably whatever choice you want. There are unspoken messages about love, their special purposes, nothing to fear, nothing can be done wrong. And as much as you hear that you get judged, I've never heard of any experience where you are judged. You are just shown that that was your experience. There may be mistakes, and there may be lessons learned from that, but it's all about your experience here on earth. When you return to your body, when you're told to return or you have a choice to return, you can be quite conscious of the fact that when you are taken back, it is reluctantly, and you return with it like a crashing of sound and limitations and heavy dutiness, like as if you're coming from somewhere absolutely idyllic back into a world of limitation, of stress, of pain, going through the pain again. You often experience regret, and in some cases there is a period of depression because you don't want to be here, you want to be back there. Some of the after effects, and this is what is transformational in people, because 90% of NDEs are described as positive experiences. They cause significant changes in people's life patterns, and that is the transformational effect. They have more pro-social behaviours, and they often change their careers to be more rewarding for people. So they may become a nurse or a teacher, just something, or a volunteer somewhere. It's quite marked how the differences are. You appreciate relationships more. People become much more important. You hold no anxieties about death. So, the fear has gone. You may spend more quality time in your relationships and have much more compassion for others. You also have some reported corroborations of things that happened while you were having an NDE. They may be conversations and actions of surgeons when you're either under anaesthetic or you're flatlined. And if you're able to go back and tell the surgeons this, they will agree that that's what happened, but they have trouble believing it because they come from a medical background, and that does not cover NDEs. They can also corroborate what relatives were saying or doing at the time that you were under. They can see everything wherever they want to go. They can see. They may see some close relatives sitting in a waiting room waiting for them, or being told, and even people overseas who get phoned and said that, your life is in danger, you're in grave danger of dying. So the people with an NDE are able to go anywhere around the world and see people, relatives, loved ones, wherever they are. They can also describe the relatives that they met in an NDE, but who had passed away before they knew them. So if they go back and say, I met Uncle Sam, I've heard all about him, but I'd never heard that you'd never met them, but if you can describe to them their personality or their looks or the clothing or some physical attribute, then they can be corroborated by the people who did know Uncle Sam. So that is another one. Impressions, memories and social conditioning that we've had from our past lives, apart from before we had our NDE, are more realigned correctly with the truthful consequences from that life review, as I've mentioned that before. Just take a wee drink. So people that have come back usually see their justice. They're much more attuned to the fairness. Normally what most people will do is just observe but not get involved. It's not up to them becoming involved, but they do not like seeing unfairness. They will usually leap in to help wherever they can. There is also recorded abilities that are left with them when they return around psychic impressions. Now, this may be about healing. There actually, in one case, there was one man who was told by God how to heal, and that's very interesting. If you're going, oh, what was he told? The only thing I can recall of that was that he was told to vacuum up the illness and send it to God. So that's all I can remember about it. But this man claims he can heal people now, and a whole room full of people within a matter of minutes. And these are the things that happen. There could be someone who can actually physically see what is wrong in a person and know and be able to tell the person that there is something wrong there. There may be a mental health ability to be able to help people with their mental health. And even there are some people who come back as animal communicators, as they are able to hear and understand what animals are saying, which is actually a really good thing that's happening. People that come back often become more sensitive, and that's not just to light or sound, it's to chemicals. And they also they feel like they're jinxed with electronic equipment or electric equipment. It's like everything goes wrong when they touch it. So that's just another thing. And what's most important is that they no longer feel an attachment to material possessions. They do not worry about what sort of car they have, furniture or clothes that they wear, the image that they have. Those things become so not as important anymore. They understand that it's not, it's not relevant to what we're here for. Okay, so we've talked about the positive experiences, and we probably do need to cover the negative ones. And there's only about 10% of the people who do experience this. And they might have something unpleasant that seems to have been experienced, but they're reluctant to talk about them because they might feel ashamed or embarrassed. and it's not a nice thing. They might not even want to go there. So some of the things that people have just sort of mentioned are that there are some depressing scenes. There may be tortured souls, or sometimes they're traumatized from what they saw. They can often be accompanied by a robed figure. Now, it seems like most people would say that that is their guide, who is there to protect them from anything that may hurt them. And I'm not sure what they are there for, but that seems to make good sense to me. And they appear to go sometimes from the light into darkness, as opposed to where people normally go from the darkness into the light. So some of the researchers have also stated that when questioned by their difficult scenes, that they ask them about their own past lives, the history in their childhood, say, and these people often have experienced some terrible things in their life. I mean, they may have gone to foster homes or been abused by someone, and they haven't been able to let go of it. And because they haven't let go of their difficult past history, then they are going to obviously take that with them, because that's where they're coming from. I'm not sure if that's the truth or not, but that has been shared by a number of the researchers. Most well-known people, a lot of theosophists will probably know of Ibn Alexander, and he often has shared a few talks with the Theosophical Society in Chicago. There are several on YouTube of him. They're quite long, but they're really worth listening to. And Ibn Alexander is a neurosurgeon, qualified specialist, and he one day went down. His brain was just collapsing, and they ended up finding out afterwards that he had encephalitis, and he just crashed at home, and it took a number of days. He was coming in and out of consciousness, and I think they recorded his demise from this earth for about 90 minutes, which is an hour and a half, and it's the longest that I've actually heard of someone who has passed over. Another one is Colton Burpo. He is the young boy that I've mentioned. He died of a burst appendix. When he came back, he was telling his parents, and his parents were very strict Christians, but they knew their son. He didn't make things up, and he told them all about his experience. So they've actually written a book, I think, and they do talk about it in churches, and it has become part of their lives as well. So it's changed the way that their parents view the world. Anyone may have heard of Daniel Brinkley. Now, Daniel was not a good boy. He was a bit of a lad. He was getting himself into trouble, taking drugs, getting into crime, generally going the wrong way. So he started, I think the first time he had a lightning strike in the house, and I think he was on the phone at the time, and he had several saying that lightning never strikes once. Only strikes once was not the case with Daniel. I think he had about 3 lightning strikes, and one of those occasions damaged his heart. So he ended up going in for open heart surgery, whereupon he had another NDE. And it was actually in one of those occasions that, because he kept going back and having them, and they kept trying to show him what he should be doing, But it wasn't until the heart surgery that he realised that he was heading down the wrong path and that he had a purpose to fulfil. So he'd better turn around and start fulfilling that purpose. And I don't think he's had any more near-death experiences since then. He has done some amazing work since then, raising funds to build hospices around the states, and he still spends a lot of time talking to people that are terminally ill and helping them to understand what happens when they die so that they are not afraid anymore. Anita Mojani is another popular, well-known person. She also has a lot of videos on YouTube. She had cancer and she was on her deathbed and the organs were starting to fail in her body. She was that close. That's when she nearly died, came back, where they explained to her a lot of things and was told that she can cure herself. So she decided that she would come back and fulfill this, and came back, sat up in bed, started talking to people, and within 3 days she walked out of the hospice. And I think it was about 3 months' time they looked for the cancer that was right throughout her body, and they couldn't find any cancer anywhere. So it's a wonderful story, and she's always giving her thoughts of the way things should be on YouTube. And the last person that made a major effect on me, her name was Renee Pazaro. And I saw her on a Baha'i documentary. Well, actually, it was a lecture that she gave at a Baha'i convention. She spoke about several of her near-death experiences, which started as a young girl, and she had, I think it was an anaphylactic shock when they were at the dinner table, whereupon they called the ambulance, and the ambulance came and she was leaving her body again about the time that they were putting her in the ambulance. So they popped her down onto the pavement in front of the house and started doing CPR on her. And she recalls this very well because she was looking down on that situation and she could see coming along the road one of her dear friends. And then she got very worried about her dear friend seeing her in this situation, which she felt would really upset her. And that was one of the situations that she had. And the other one was that she had a being with her throughout the whole thing, and she saw this being come and escort her around the other world. She didn't know who he was, but after she'd had a few of these and kept seeing him, when she was a young woman, she went to a fireside, a Baha'i fireside, where they teach you all about the Baha'i faith. And there she was shown a picture of Baha'u'llah, who was their religious leader. And this was the man that she had seen on the other side. So that is why she became a Baha'i and was talking at a Baha'i convention. So those are the people that made a big influence on a lot of people's lives and understanding a lot more about NDEs. Now I can talk to you about this chap, Peter Fenwick, was the one that had a big impression upon me. He's got a couple of interviews on YouTube, quite long ones, but interesting, really interesting person. And I think I've seen him in the talk with Ibn Alexander at the Theosophical Society in Chicago. He was sitting in the front row. Peter specialises in both nerves and the brain. He studied consciousness because he realised that consciousness works outside of the brain, and when, like for the near-death experiences, when the brain is shut down, or how could they have these memories and experiences when the brain's not working? So he was studying all about the neurons and receptors. How does this work as a specialist? He studied cardiac patients, but of course there was hardly any way that he could talk to them when they passed over. So he had to do it through the carers' experiences. Now may be nurses, hospice carers, family members. There's a lot of people who were there for people when they pass. One thing that he did mention, he said that most people who experience an NDE have never heard of the term near-death experience. So it is a completely new phenomenon to them. And that's really quite interesting, that they actually don't mention it to a lot of people because it's a strange experience until they come across someone who says, yes, I know what that is. And they're quite receptive, whereas a lot of people aren't. A lot of people will not say anything because they look at them as if they're a bit strange and they don't understand what they're talking about. So they quite often just clam up. Peter included the carers of hospice and failing heart patients, and he recorded all of the accounts of that dying patient, where possible, from the carer. He believes that consciousness is very difficult to research and quantify because scientists cannot accept near-death storytelling for evidence. They need tools to make it all fit together by testing and refining and revising, getting in statistics that are all the same. And he says that our minds are not our brains. NDEs show our consciousness can exist after our heart and brain have stopped working. He also realised that drugs such as LSD and ayahuasca also give access to other dimensions, opening portals to higher realms. So, he's starting to expand what he's considering here. And he came back with a pretty good medical explanation. And he sees that perhaps as energy coming into the brain, so the energy waves, and they function and filter through microtubules. Now, there might be some people who know what they are, but they are like structures that act like a quantum mechanical computer. So they collapse them so that the energy waves get woven into the circuits of the brain to enable the mind to comprehend self-consciousness. Okay, so some of the reports that he made, the reports that he made from the carers, the patients report premonitions. The carers are told about these, often in a dream or a vision, or it suddenly comes to them that they're going to die soon. Maybe it's an instinctive thing, intuitive. In the dying stages, spirit visitors come to visit. They are mainly immediate family. Sometimes they are pets that have gone, and they stand usually either by them or at the end of the bed to show that they are nearby. There are also terminal lucidity, which is a term that is used when they're almost like unconscious, but suddenly they wake up, they've almost got energy back. They start talking to their families in a way like as if, the physical sometimes returns, and they start talking and saying goodbye to their family. And that can include Alzheimer patients who remember their loved ones once again. There are also frequent attachment issues, and these are called spiritual restlessness. They're difficulty dying because they have something that's holding them back. It might be that their dependents are worrying them. What are they going to be doing when they've gone? How are they going to be looked after? But it may be a possession of some kind, their identity. They don't want to let go of that or their ego. There's also grief and guilt especially, having to release the guilt by explaining to someone, telling someone what they've done and never told before, just so that they can let the guilt go off their shoulders. And this will actually help them to die if they can release all these things that hold them back. When they die, there is a time of negotiation, and you may have seen this happen. If a patient wants someone to be with them before they die, then they will hold on until that point, or they may want to see someone get married or see a baby born. There are many different things that hold the person back, but that can be negotiated, and you usually do find that it works out fine. Sometimes, as what usually happens, the whole family congregates around the dying person, but they actually don't want to die in front of the whole family, so they will wait until they are alone or with a lot less people, and that's often the time that they will die. Otherwise, they'll wait till everyone's together. That happened with my sister, who died about 7 years ago, and my sister was flying over from England, and she kept saying all the way home, "Please don't die, Lynn, please don't die. I want to be with you before you die." And I had said to my sister, you can go if you want to. You don't have to wait for Chris to come. If you want to go, you can go. But she obviously chose to wait, because on the Friday morning, my sister flew in from England, and she died in the evening. And we usually have what we would call a run o'clock on a Friday night, and we had a couple of glasses of wine around her in the evening. And it was after that, when everyone went back home to have dinner, that's the time that she died. So, it was good. She got time together with everyone and then decided to go when it was quiet. They can also negotiate saying goodbye to ones that cannot make it and who do not know. It may be a sudden death even, and it depends upon the mental state of the receiver. They must be able to cope with seeing a vision of their loved one. And these actually occur 99% of the time at the time of death. So that's a pretty big percentage of people. Someone, somewhere, may have a vision of the person dying. The receiver may feel a loss or dream of the person connecting, or see a vision of them and receive a message that they are all right. 45% of the messages received did not know the person was dying. Now, I've got a good example here of a mother who was living in England, and she woke up in the middle of the night to seeing her son in her bedroom dripping wet. It took her a little bit by surprise, I'm sure, but he just said to her, "It's okay, Mum. I just want you to know that I'm okay." And what had happened, she knew he had died because he was living in Australia at the time, and he had just suffered a fatal car accident in which the car ended up in water, hence being wet. she knew that he had died at the time of his death because of being nighttime. It would have been during the day in Australia. And being wet, she knew that that was when he went. Now, some of the things that happen when a person dies, light appears in the room. This often happens. In one case, the corridor was filled with light. The carer thought that the light was still on, so they went to turn the light off, but it wasn't on. They found the relative dying, but it did give them the chance to spend their last moments together. 35% of nurses report light coming from the rooms in hospitals. A lot of them just say, oh, so-and-so's about to go soon. Whether they're more able to see that than other people is probably likely. One person's remark to me was that it was when their parent died, how beautiful the sunlight flooded the room when your relative died. So that may have been the sunlight, but then again, it seems to coincide with the fact that the light comes in. Sometimes they see shapes leaving the body. They may be in the shape of the person, like a mirage, or it could be like smoke or mist swirling with a form. Also, clocks stop, and sometimes right on the time of death, they can just stop. In a couple of cases, I've experienced a loud bang or something like a lightning strike or a clap of thunder. And this has happened to me. The loud bang happened when my sister died while we were having dinner. I heard a huge bang and it sounded like it was coming from another suburb. And I went outside to see if I could see flames or smoke or something, but there was nothing there. But when I came back inside, someone got a text message to say to go now, that she had just passed. My grandmother's sister also went out with a loud bang, recalled to me by my cousin, who said that she actually was living in Pakuranga at the time on the flat where the shops are, and my great aunt was in a rest home up the top on the hill, and apparently she went out when the lightning struck. And I actually remembered that so well because it was the loudest lightning that I had ever heard. And my cousin laughed because she said, Mum always wanted to go out with a bang. So, things like that do happen. Also, pets can be seen to cry out and behave strangely as if in grief. Cats are particularly intuitive and know this. I've seen a video, I don't know if you know, of Colton Marmalade, 2 cats, and one of them had got cancer and died just before Christmas. And then he did a video of the other cat, Marmalade, talking, as if talking to another cat. And it was really quite evident that there was something that this cat was responding to. So yeah, there are things, people experience different things, many different things. There may be birds that appear at windows. Sometimes there are feathers appearing everywhere, or butterflies just flittering around that keep coming. And this can often happen until the funeral and sometimes after as well. But these are just the observations. Another thing that has been experienced are shared death experiences. Now, these are SDEs. So as a person dies, certain phenomena may be experienced by the carer. So that in one particular case I'll give you was a mother dying and her daughter, who was a doctor, who was sitting with her at the time. The light filled the room and enveloped the dying person and the daughter. So they were both enveloped in this beautiful light. The carer also left her body in an OBE. out-of-body experience and departed with her to a point. So they travelled together through the light to a point. They were also able to talk to each other, but obviously not through the voice box. It was thought transference. And then there came a point where the light faded. They said goodbye. The mother went into the light and the daughter came back into her body. And that, for a doctor, is a pretty amazing thing to happen. So those are the sort of things that obviously can happen. They see the dead relatives or friends escorting the dying person away. Sometimes the dying person will call out the name of someone that has departed and then die, or say so-and-so's here. So, there are different ways of knowing that the family are around. And this is another one. The geometry of the room changes. If anyone's experienced someone dying, they may have noticed the space is distorted, that the room loses the four walls into a slightly changing space. Occasionally, doctors have seen images of the person that they're working on. They might see their life review. And I'm talking about an instance where an accident and emergency doctor was giving a person CPR, and while they're giving them CPR, they're seeing images of this person in different situations. They're seeing them have their life review, and they're also brought in. And that's also a shared death experience. It's an interesting aspect of it. Now, getting into validating MDEs, there are so many things that actually people can say, well, that's not it, and that's not it, and that's not it. And that's fine, because all they're doing is giving evidence. They're not proving anything here. But there are examples where blind people who've never seen in their life have an NDE experience and see everything. So, I mean, that's pretty incredible. They can come back and say, I saw this, that, and the other. So that's a pretty incredible experience, I would imagine. Of course, we have ancient writings from around the world, from different countries, going back, and their beliefs always talk about the afterlife. And the Egyptians, of course, are the most noted ones. They have the Book of the Dead, which is in hieroglyphics, and it talks all about mummifying and the weighing of the heart against the feather. There are many different things in that life journey through to the afterlife. And the afterlife is looked after by Osiris. He's the god of the afterlife. So, that's an interesting one because we actually have texts on it. Also, the validations are usually the things to do with corroborating what went on when a patient was dying or had died. And it's often in more than one place at a time. There are the shared death experiences where bystanders will also experience something of that person's passing. Okay, so we go back a little bit to Theosophy, and Helena Blavatsky did give a little description of the life review, which I thought was fabulous. I'll read it with you. It's at the solemn moment of death, every man, even or woman, even when death is sudden, sees the whole of his past life marshalled before him in its minutest details. But this instant is enough to show him the whole chain of causes which have been at work during his life He sees and now understands himself as he is, unadorned by flattery or self-deception. He reads his life, remaining as a spectator, looking down into the arena he is quitting. He feels and knows the justice of all the suffering that has overtaken him. So that's it's a pretty good succinct thing taken way back then. And I've got one more on this. Dr. Raymond Moody, one of the most well-known people, he wrote a little bit of philosophy in one of his books, which I think was worthy of bringing to the Theosophist's attention. Moody spoke of a being of light, and though none of the respondents used that phrase in particular, they normally say a supreme being or a being of light, some seem to be aware of a presence or voice behind them, an association with the light. The light is full of love. It's like it's almost overpowering from their description. They almost want to get down on their knees from the power of the love that comes from that light. And here we must, I think, make a speculative leap. I submit that this presence or voice is actually oneself. And his explanation, it is not merely a projection of one's personality, however, but one's total self, or what in some traditions is called the higher self. In this view, the individual personality is but a split or fragment of the total self with which it is reunited at the point of death. During ordinary life, the individual personality functions in a seemingly autonomous way, as though it were a separate entity from everyone else. In fact, however, it is invisibly tied to the larger self-structure of which it is a part. And that was a quote from Ken Ring in his book Life at Death, one of the quotes that Dr. Raymond Moody had made. I'm not a very good artist, but I have drawn a visual account of the journey between. That's the end of that presentation, but if it's okay, Renee, I can give you another page, only a one page, a drawing that I drew. I'm not a very good artist, but I have drawn a visual account of the journey between dying and the other side.
That'd be great, Carole, go for it.
It's just a visual thing that takes you from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. And the left-hand side is more about the premonitions, the start of when people become aware that their life is limited, and that may be in terms of dreams, visions, voices, knowing, intuition. And it gives them time to prepare, for instance, getting their wills up to date, talking with family and friends, settling things, making peace with people, healing some hurts that they've had, getting rid of the guilt and learning to talk to people before they go. So upon their deathbed, there's a little picture of a bed there. I hope you can see that. And there are visions at the end of the bed. There's a period of negotiating. There's clarity of mind. There's also fear that turns to hope, peace, serenity, no more pain, and clarity of mind. And a very good example here is Steve Jobs. His last three words were wow, wow, wow. So, I had to put that in because it's obviously something that is quite inspiring. There's also the floating up above the body, listening and seeing from above. Then they may see a light and travel through a tunnel or across water. Then if there is a point where they have to let go of all of their things that hold them back, and they enter into the period of white light and pure love. And it's brilliant, apparently. This new reality does not have time or space. There is lucidity in this white light. People can hear bells or music, and there are notes not heard before, colours never seen before. And there, as I've said, there were flowers, birds, animals, butterflies. They may see angels, they may have assistance from a supreme being. They are greeted by people on the other side. There is always love, support, and compassion from these people they meet. They may also go through a period of disintegration of their physical being and ultimate identity, and it goes out to absolute nothingness and then re-emerges into the true source. This happened to Renee Pizarro. There is also a life review, and it's usually about that point where they decide, or they have to be acknowledged to whether they pass into spirit, or that they have a choice, or that they know, they are told they have to go back. So if they do pass the point of no return, that's when the things like clocks stop, and birds and butterflies, things happen to people. There might be the noise, the bang, the animals, all sorts of things that happen. There may be the light that is shown to people. All at this point, if they are told to come back, they are told to return. And it is often a conscious return to the body. They return to the physical pain, the opportunity to change themselves in the way they've been living their life. They may even experience some depression. They have a life purpose to fulfill. And I think it's at that point that's where I will leave you, because the whole thing is all about transformation, of learning what is important in this life. And it's obviously not possessions or qualifications. It is to do with how you can help other people, how we can share and love each other in a true sense. And I think I have to leave that with you. That is it for me, but I'm sure that if there are any questions, I'm welcome to take some.
Okay, thanks, Carole. That was just wonderful. Can see all the research and how you've put everything together. Very informative and very interesting. So thank you for sharing. Really wonderful.